respect, that number's probably okay. However, with a little asterisk, as far as, using the special projects funds, which isn't necessarily out of taxation, instead of contracting it out, we're actually getting more work done at less of a cost.
Right.
Which is being factored in and should be explained.
More productive.
So that our actual per capita cost would actually be reduced and less, from a normal operational standpoint, if that's the norm. The norm is not to take the Chapter 90 fund and do the work yourself, like most communities.
Yeah, I guess the question that I would ask a municipal benchmarking is attributed to the issue of looking at when they accumulate their figures for calculating these numbers, and specifically in the case of Public Works, right? Are these measurements the same across the board? Meaning that where are they collecting the information from, and does it include Chapter 90 expenditures or not? If it doesn't, and those expenditures show up because we use that money to pay our own labor, that would account for the difference. Which I think is part of the case, because my understanding is, at least the explanation I got, related to how they calculated the number of employees, because they didn't come and ask how many employees we had, but they used some average salary number and divided it by the expenditures and came up with this number, right? So, which has created a lot of confusion for people, and it bothers me less, because my intent of looking at this report was to look at differences and then where there were to go in and understand where they came from.
Right.
And once I understood it, even if there was a big difference, right, at least then we could take the appropriate action, because we would then know what the basis is. But the bottom line is, this is what we're spending.
Right.
We're
Yeah, and again, with the
operating.
explanations, I have no problem with the way that we're operating. I think we're being extremely efficient. We get good bang for our buck, and I think it's the way that the department's designed, and it's a good system.
Mr. Vino, and I think we have to move on.
Yeah. I'm going to be brief, but I do want to say this, and you'll probably hear it later in the day. This was a waste of $8,000. We have a company here that did not even give back to department heads, did not ask how many employees they had, and we're going to look at that book, and I'm told we're looking at it to see how we're doing business. I can't do that with a company that made up numbers from some form that we have no idea where they came from, and put them in print, didn't show up for the first meeting we had when we had the public there. That was an absolute disgrace. I'm sorry. I was not in favor of benchmark report, as we all know, and this proves why I wasn't, because this is a total waste of $8,000. Thank you.
I just want to close. School isn't here, and I just want to say, from the school's end, when you have a benchmarking and you show a number of towns that are supposed to be equal, and all those towns get more local aid, state aid for their education programs, and versus the town of North Reading. I mean, that was the biggest discrepancy in, that's my understanding from the overview the author gave to department heads when we were asking. Clearly then, if you're comparing towns to towns of demographics and logistics, but the biggest component is state aid for education that comes back to communities is greater than the other communities. Well, obviously then, their costs per student are less based on those comparisons. I can understand why
the cost per student
are.
They're spending, according to the report, we're spending less.
We're spending
per
less.
pupil or per capita or whatever.
So it's, to me, that's an external, I don't want to say error, it's just an external exercise when for comparative purposes, it's external. And I only bring that up because what I'm bringing to your attention is internal. It's mathematics. It's just basic getting the math
What
right.
it comes back to, Dave, is what is the intent of using the report? What does it bring?
Well, but it
surface,
caused
right?
polarization
No, I understand.
And we need to get beyond that and understand, everyone need to understand why it caused it, and get vent it out, and then get there, the reality check of why, and then move on, so that we don't get into some kind of fight, go all the way through town meeting over $8,000 benchmarking exercise.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
Well, I would hope not.
I don't think it's gonna happen, and if some people are going to start to do that, and try and do that, I don't think our board's going to
Well, I'm
join
glad to
that
hear
fray,
that.
other than to the extent of saying that's not what the purpose was for. And again, I think it's important, the dialogue that we're having now, the constructive criticism that's being levied against the consultant is a good thing, because it made us go back individually on a department by department basis to take a look and pick apart what they did, which in turn makes us look at what we're doing and how we're doing things. To me, that's a good thing. You know, it's a necessary exercise, and if we can use them as the stimulus to promote some more discussion and understanding, and not just amongst ourselves internally here in Town Hall, but within the community, money's well spent.
What it's given me is a broader objective at looking at our overall budget, expenditures and the way we're doing things. And, you know, I think there's some value to that.
Right.
And I think it would be a mistake to use it as a tool to say, well, we want to be, we want to bring our numbers down in this area and up in another area because our peer towns that we've selected are doing that. That's not the case. The case is to look at it and understand and compare and say, gee, this town, there's a difference between this town and North Reading. What's the difference about? What are they doing? What are we doing? Are there errors in the numbers? Because, you know, I mean, when you take an accumulation of all the communities in the state, which is what municipal benchmarking has done, and collected this data from tons of different sources. I mean, we all know that, I mean, we should know that there's going to be discrepancies, and, you know, it would be amazing if everybody reported everything exactly the same way, and therefore you could make maybe a better comparison. And then there's reasons why we do things differently than other communities for purposes that the community decided years ago. If you look at some of the detail in the various budgets of what gets done, and you make the comparisons, maybe we spend a little more on snow and ice than another community, but you know, our roads clearly are safer. Look at the records, and you know, drive out of North Reading on any day of a snowstorm, and you see the difference. Now you could say, well, we'd be happy with 2 inches of snow on the road all winter long, and we'll cut the snow and ice budget. You know, that's a decision that can be made, but not necessarily a good one. All right, with that, thank you very much, Dave. I think that was a very well prepared presentation.
Thank you.
We're going to take a 5-minute.
Before I begin with the actual numbers and budget presentation, I'd like to take leave of this austere meeting for a few moments, because I feel that from the feedback I've received from sources within the community that the police department is likely to be the recipient of some scrutiny as a result of that benchmark study. So in preparation to defend our budget, if you would bear with me, the police department has submitted an honest, ethical, and accurate representation of the North Reading Police Department's fiscal 2009 needs. Our needs are summarized in our mission statement, which reads as follows. The mission of the
Are you reading from a handout, or?
Yes, you have a copy.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
The mission of the North Reading Police Department is to work with all citizens to preserve life, maintain human rights, protect property, and promote individual responsibility and community commitment. This mission will be accomplished by establishing a strong partnership between the community, its residents, and police department. And that mission means an awful lot to us. When you take a walk through our new facility, you'll find that mission posted on every floor, in and around the locker room, any place an employee goes, and it's in our public areas. And along with that, we publish our value statements as well, which you'll find in our budget submission. What I have found, however, is that in submitting this honest, accurate, and ethical representation, is that I've been somewhat naive in my submission. For example, when we get into the numbers for overtime, I've sat here for a number of years and learned and watched, particularly from the input from the board and from the finance committee, to take a look at the number of actual hours we use for certain categories of overtime. For example, sick time. It was a member of the finance committee that pointed out to us a number of years ago that, to my former boss, Chief Manelli, they said, Chief, you know, you have in here about 2,000 hours for sick time coverage, but in reality, you only use about 100 hours a year. And that kind of took us back and broke us out of that old traditional mold of building in inflationary numbers. So the submissions from that time on have been accurate representations. But what I've found is that when we submitted the budget, there is an automatic $141,000 deduction that's calculated into the town's program. So my budget, before it even went to print, was reduced by an unassigned $141,000. Now, what does that tell me? That tells me, as a department head, next year, I better come in here with an additional $141,000 so that I can have my true budget needs at least make it to the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen for actual scrutiny and comment.
Dave, excuse me, what do you mean by there was $141,000?
It started, from what my research has told me that it started about 3 or 4 fiscal years ago when there was some kind of a shortfall, and it was an agreement between the school department, finance, and the Board of Selectmen to make cuts across the board. And I forget what the percentage was, and that came out of our overtime. But from that point on, that $141,000 apparently has shown up as an automatic reduction in the department's request before it even makes for you folks to scrutinize that and give me a chance to defend our needs. So we're starting off in the hole, and Greg is aware, and Joe's probably aware, that right now we're in trouble with our overtime. We have a strong austerity program in place currently, where we're not filling overnight shifts. We're monitoring even the afternoon and day shifts, and not so we're creating a situation where we're not delivering the level of services that the community is used to, creating an issue of safety within the community and for our officers by not filling some of these shifts for a significant portion of the year. And we're still going to be short. And guess what we're going to be short? $141,000. And so we will be coming back to this austere group at some time, probably beginning of March or middle of March, saying, listen, we're about to be out of overtime money, and it's going to be short that amount. I'd like to remind the group gathered here with a quote from the International Chiefs of Police Association, worked in conjunction with the International Association of City Mayors, and they come up, the primary purpose of government is to provide for the public safety. A legitimate risk to the public or staff health and safety, if demonstrated, must be taken into account before any budget cut is considered or implemented. A risk analysis considering possible threats and the probability of occurrence must be accounted for. So what we've done over the last couple of days in preparation for defending our position is we went back over the last 3 years, and we took a sampling of some of the categories of incidents that the police department responds to. And if you look on page 2 of your handout, you'll see that. For example, alarms. In the year 2006, we had 717 alarms versus 647 for the year before that. And this is the calendar year, by the way, folks, too. Disturbances, we had a significant increase in the number of disturbances reported in 2006 over the previous 2 years. And this follows along and goes over to page 3 of this document, where you'll see arrests, for example, seem to be down, but that was impacted by a conscious decision on the part of our department to subpoena in or summons in people whom we traditionally would arrest for minor offenses because of the fact that we were housed in a temporary headquarters without a certified jail, and it was a problematic. We felt we were putting the town of Wilmington in a position of liability and taking advantage of their support of this agency. So we cut back on the number of arrests and turned that into summoning some people to appear in court. We provide welfare checks. You know, we get calls from residents, or from people out of state. Would you please check